Good afternoon. It's May 27th, 2008, and we're going to be interviewing Al Burkhartzmeyer, a longtime resident of Faribault, and our videographer is Jeffrey Jarvis, and I'm Doc Roy Anderson, and we have Pauline Schreiber here also. And 2 days ago, Sunday, there was a tornado at Hugo, north of St. Paul, that took a 2-year-old girl's life and others. And today it's 43 degrees when I got up, so it's a cool spring day. And Al, we want you to tell us a little about your parents and what the name Burkhartzmeyer means, and so the floor is yours here.
Well, I was born November 1st, 1920. My father is Ferdy. He was born in Odessa, Russia. He never went to school a day in his life. His dad, my grandpa, of course, sent 2 of the children over here, and they ended up in North Dakota, and then they drifted down to Faribault. And after they got here, the rest of the family came. And I just recently, an aunt of mine, Seal Burkhartzmeyer, that died, we had a German Bible, and in there was telling how they came from Austria by ox cart to get to Odessa, because Odessa was a seaport. It was a big lake in Russia, and he thought the farmland would be better there. So he moved his family there. My mother is Martha Krentz. She's from this area. She was born in Deerfield. My grandpa Krentz homesteaded all this land along Cannon Lake here. He was the original owner of acres and acres of that. And I have 2 brothers. Walter's 86, we call Putz. Donald is 84, we call Buck. My wife is Irma. She came from South Dakota. And we met one night coming home from choir. That's the first, when I first met her, we were going to choir practice at Trinity. We were married in 1949. We have 1 son, Bruce. He was born in 1952. We opened the store the same year that we were married, 1949. That's when we opened the first store. I was baptized at Trinity. I was confirmed at Trinity, and I'm sure I'm going to be buried there before long. So everything is planned. I went to Trinity Lutheran School, and one thing I remembered about that, we would come home noon hours for lunch. My mother would always have a table set. She'd have a pie made and cut it in 4 pieces. Dad and his 3 sons. We'd eat in about 10 minutes, and then we'd play cards, or we always did something as a family. We've always done that. We've been together all these years. Here, even in the store, after 80 years, we're still talking to each other. And I think that's quite remarkable. I went to high school. I graduated in 1938. And I didn't have a very good career in high school because we were so poor. We always worked. We all had jobs after school. I'll get into that later. The only thing I noted, Bruce Smith graduated the same year, and he lived on Division Street about a block from us. We were in the back behind the streets, and he would throw footballs, and my 2 brothers and I, we would catch him. We did that by the hour. But that's the only thing I remember about high school. Outside of, I knew I was never going to go to college, so I wanted to take bookkeeping and typing and things could help me with to run a shoe store, because that's what I was determined to do. Well, I get my card from school and everything was blotted out in red. Sent me to shop. Well, I never knew the front end or the back end of a handle, but that's what I did. I had shop for a couple of years and hated every minute of it, but at that time they wouldn't let any men take bookkeeping or typing or things like that.
Oh.
So I had to take shop. The first place I really started to work was called Johnson's Shoe Store. And that's why I was really in grade school. That was where, well, right now there's a tattoo shop. That used to be Cleven's Shoe Store. And Johnson was from Wadamingo. And he came over here and wanted to start a shoe store. And he was a great, big, tall Swede. And he had Dick Thompson, who was a neighbor of mine, and Dick was older, and we worked there. We always had to wear green coats, I remember that. We were hot stuff, we had the green coats to wait on people. But we had a shoe store. Then,
Was that shoe store located by the security building then? In that area?
no, it's where the tattoo shop is on 3rd Street.
On Third Street, okay.
That was Cleven's Shoe Store. And they had a front on it that looked like over at the Faribault Journal that used to be, Kelly had the newspaper in town on 3rd Street. He had those big white pillars over there. That's what he had in front of this store. That's the first place I worked. Now, my father worked at the shoe factory. When he first came here, not reading or writing, he worked. Gus Gonzalez from the Olympia gave him a job. He was down there making ice cream and candy, and they helped him learn the English language. And then he went in the shoe factory, and he started working at the shoe factory. And W.S. Shaft, that would be Stuart Shaft's father, owned the factory at that time. And it was the biggest industry we had in town. There was over 800 employees. And, well, there's parking lots now were behind the KC's, that was a shoe factory building. And then where the Monty's is now in that corner was a big power plant. He had a big smokestack there, and he had a big furnace, and he heated pretty near all of Central Avenue. This Shaft did. That's many years ago. And then to get from that building, what is torn down now, over to the building that is now called Monty's, they had like a walkway between the two buildings, like they call skyways now. They had that, and that's many years ago. So the cutting room is up there, and the fitting room, they'd go over here to this other building. And then the other building that's torn down now is where the parking lot is by the post office. Then the one across the street, called Peterson Art Building, that was shoe factory. And underneath that, they had a little railroad, like a little tunnel. And they had cars with 2 wheels on it. They could haul supplies back and forth, the finished products. And that was a real, I really enjoyed that railroad. That was better than a toy, I'll tell you. I was pretty young doing that.
That was underground, you say?
That was underground.
Oh.
And I don't know if it's still there or not. I never asked Monty about it. Then the next thing, the shoe factory opened a shoe department in a store called Champaign and Grant. And I think I got a ruler there with that on. Maybe I didn't bring it, but somebody just brought that in to me.
I don't see the ruler there, but wait a minute.
But anyway, Champaign had linoleum. And he was in the back of the building, and Harold Zilski would lay the linoleum. In the store, he had Cassie Grant. She sold ladies' clothing. That's the Acrobat shoes.
Oh.
Champaign and Grant.
I
They
see.
had like a shoe department there. And then Archie Tischler, who was an old Rotarian, he was running that shoe department. So of course my dad being in the shoe factory, I got a job there after school. And I'd go down there, and if they didn't have a shoe in stock, then Archie would write out an order, and I'd go down to the back end and go in the back door, which is the front doors of Monty's now. I'd go in there, and there sat Stuart Shaft, Mr. McGraw, and Mr. There was three of them there that I knew real well. They were the runners of the store. Francis Lockwood was sitting there. He would write up the order. Then I'd go downstairs, get in this little car, and go over to 4th Street, pick up the shoe, and ride it back. I'd run up to the shoe department. I thought that was a real cool job. I had a lot of fun doing that. Then the shoe factory closed in 1934.
Could you discuss some of the reasons for that, Al?
Well, they had different people. We sold stock. We have stock at home. We were buying stock, trying to keep it going.
I see.
And the last people were from Tennessee. Their name was Gullicksons. And all they did, they wanted to run it in the ground and get the trade name Burkhartzmeyer, or not Burkhartzmeyer, but Acrobat shoes, and this sort of thing. And they tell my dad to take a hide of leather and take the center of it and cut out one pair of shoes and throw the rest away. It was just very wasteful. They ran it right to the ground, and then they took the machinery and the patents and moved it to Tennessee.
Wow.
So that's kind of the history of the shoe factory.
I see.
Well, after that, I was just about out of high school, and Walt Huber, he had an insurance agency here. He and I opened the shoe store, or the shoe department at Oaks's. I think there's a picture of that there, Roy. And you can see, this is, that's where the money went. They write a sales slip and put it up there, and they shoot it up the office.
Here's a, what do you call that, Al? The name for that?
I really don't know.
SNL had that too,
Yeah.
I remember.
But that's how we made change at Oaks's. But he and I had this shoe store, and we did very well there. I'll have to say that. But now here I'm in high school most, and we had suits on every day, and we come in there. We were a high-class operation. Then the war come. So Wally went in the Navy first, and then I joined the Navy in 1942, I joined the Navy. And I was sent to Great Lakes. Of course, that was boot camp. The one thing I remember about boot camp, being a real young rookie, never been away, I'd never been to Minneapolis until the Navy took me up to St. Paul or Minneapolis. I'd never been out of town. And I got there in Great Lakes, had breakfast, in the Navy, pork and beans on Saturday. Then they would take a big spoon of ketchup and throw them on the pork and beans. Well, the ketchup hit the pork and beans, and then it landed on my white uniform. And our captain says, "You better get lost, Burkhartzmeyer." Well, what am I going to do? 10,000 soldiers and didn't know anybody or nothing. I didn't even know how to get lost. But I found out how to do that later. But that's my recollection of boot camp.
Was it early to bed and early to rise? And
Oh yeah. And then, one other thing there, we had to sleep on hammocks. Feet here, head here, back and forth. 6 of us in a bay. And sometimes the feet didn't smell so good, but the only thing I had trouble with, we all got vaccinations. And you lay in that hammock, and that rubbed on my arm. And the vaccination come off, and I got an infection. So then I ended up in a sick bay right away. So I didn't get much boot training.
I see.
Excuse me. After the war, we came home, and Wally and I got a job with Herberger's up in Hibbing. So we both went up there and we started this shoe department. And Hibbing was a pretty big city, a mining town at the time. And I can remember a couple of figures. They were doing about $30,000 a year in business. And the first year we got there, we did over $100,000 for him. But he and I had our suits on, standing there all the time. And he'd wait on somebody and he'd say, I'm not sure of this. I want to have Dr. Burkhartzmeyer talk to him, back and forth. And we really did a business. Well, then, I wanted to, all I had ever had in my head was opening a shoe store. So I was up there earning a little money for a while. And then we came back to Faribault. And I wanted to see what we could do. Well, there wasn't any place you could open a store. There wasn't an empty building up and down Central Avenue. Everything was filled. So we bought John Reinecke. There's a picture there, a little ad in the paper. We bought his harness shop. He was on First Avenue. It was L&S Sign Company, now it's Peterson. Well, L&S, they had a furnace, and they took the coals out of the furnace and put them in a pile. They never took them outside. So the first job we had was carry all those ashes outside. Well, my dad...
It's about John Reinecke
Yeah.
here.
My dad was over there. I got 3 boys, so we were there shoveling coal out. That's what I remember about that. And then we had just a little counter, and John had shoe repairing equipment. And we started fixing shoes. And John had a harness shop, and then he retired and got out of there. So we started by buying a few pair of men's rubbers. We'd wear work rubbers or dress rubbers. We had a few rubbers in there. Started selling shoes. And then after that, I was always looking for a building. And over here on Central Avenue, a guy by the name of By Miller had a men's clothing store. And he was going out of business. Excuse me. And so we made a deal with Masonic Lodge to rent that. So we got that building, and that's where we started our store. We only had the repair shop really in First Avenue. So we came up here to Central Avenue, and we were on Central Avenue, and Poyers were right to the north of us. They were on the corner. So we started there. We started real small. My wife, I would be there all alone in the morning. My wife would come at noon so I could eat. And then in the afternoon we'd wait on people. At night we would come back and mark all the shoes and do all the displaying. We didn't have any money to hire anybody. So we did everything ourselves. But that's how we started. And my father always said, don't buy anything that you can't pay for. So we didn't buy any more than we had to. One thing I remember there, this Lindenberg was a sign painter. He made us a sign that said Burk-Hartz-Meyer. We put that up, and it was in neon, and we thought that was the coolest thing. We had more comments on that, and he built that for us, and it was there for many years. We just left it there, and we used that all the time.
What does the name actually mean in
Well,
German?
the only thing I know about that, Roy, in this old German Bible from my Uncle Jake, they had in there, when they left Russia, they had relatives that they had to leave there. And some of them must have been named Hartz, and someone must have been named Meyer. So they put Burkhartzmeyer to remember a couple of these relatives. That's the only thing I can get out of an old German Bible, and I can't read German. I had to find someone to do that, and that wasn't easy either. Well, then, we were there for about 30 years, and then the opportunity came. We had to do a little finagling because Poyers were in the corner, and the next building was Dienst. He had a music store, which is now Eastman. He was running a music store. So we asked him to move over one building, and then we took this building and remodeled it, so we had kind of an L shape around Poyers. Then upstairs we had a balcony, and that was all full of linen. My dad was just in his glory. He was up there, no one dared go near that. He he loved leather, and he would take and cut it and make it and work with it all the time.
What was the product that he was making then?
Well, I have a billfold in my pocket that doesn't have a bit of stitching on it. It's just one piece of leather all folded up into a billfold.
Oh.
I've had it in my pocket for 50 years.
Wow.
Of course, it was all leather. But he would do that, and that's where we started in. Somebody needed a little arch in a shoe, he would make a little arch for the shoe. If somebody had 1 foot bigger than the other, he could go and make a shoe to match one another. He would do things like that in his little corner. He was teaching us that. So we moved over there and had a nice growth in business. And the stores were small and we were very crowded. But the Masonic Lodge, we were remodeling that building at the time. And they made a real nice basement. So we had pretty all of our men's shoes in the basement, a big stairway. So if somebody wanted a man's shoe, we had to go up and down the stairs. I think that kept us all younger, gave us all heart trouble. We all got bypasses, but it did one of two things. But anyway, business kept growing for us. We were always happy and pleased and satisfied.
What year did your brothers come into the business?
Well, they were in the repair shop. We all were in the repair shop.
Oh, on First Avenue.
And then one would come over at noon and then stay, and then another one would come. So finally, when we got this other store and expanded that, we made our Red Wing store then was on 3rd Street, and the repair shop was there, and all the shoes were on the other side. So then all three of us were there all the time. In school, I never did any sports. We never had time. We were too poor. All we had to do was we always knew we had to work. And while we were in school, I always worked in shoe stores. Brother Putz was working at Wilson Packing Company. And Brother Buck, he ran what they called Zimmerman bread truck. We had a man come to town bringing bread from the city, and he'd help this man bring it into the stores. So we all three had a job. And we didn't make very much money in those days. We'd come home with our nickel, dimes, and quarters, but we could buy a bottle of milk and a loaf of bread because that's all we had. When we bought this repair shop, the last thing we had was a savings account with $200 in. And my dad took that $200 and bought this harness shop. And I thought, sure, my mother would have a heart attack. And what are we going to do now? But now look what we have with that. That's how that started with $200. I'm buying a shoe repair shop. So it's quite a story. But
the harness shop used a lot of leather as well. So it was almost kind of a natural evolution to go from a harness shop to a shoe shop almost.
yeah, well, he made regular harnesses, but he kind of quit and retired. He didn't want any more of that. So we stayed there as long as we could. Then we moved out. He didn't like to see us go, but we wanted to get to a regular shoe store. So that's when we moved out. Now I'll go back and say something about my Navy career. I joined in 42, was sent to Great Lakes. And from Great Lakes, I was sent to the University of Chicago in Chicago. And I was in a building, something that reminds me a great deal of Shattuck School. Great big dorms like this. And we slept in there, we roomed and boarded there. We had a big dining hall. We had waitresses come and feed us 3 meals a day in the Navy. I wrote my 2 brothers, I said, man, you better join the Navy. This is King Tut, living like that. And then we'd go from this dorm, we'd march down the street in Chicago, and then there was an old church, and they made that into a radio shack. My job was a radio man, and we had to learn the Morse code, so we did that. We'd go down there for hours and hours, and we'd march back and have lunch and mark down. Then after that, I got my real inkling of what Navy was like. I went to Memphis, Tennessee. This was a new Navy facility that was being built, and there was nothing but a building here, and then over there'd be another building, and nothing but mud in between. And it was about as miserable as it could be, because you couldn't, white uniforms, you couldn't keep anything clean, and you're supposed to keep them clean.
Was that advanced training then?
Well, then they switched this from radioman to aviation radioman.
Oh, I see.
That's where that happened. It was in Memphis, Tennessee. Then from Memphis, went out to Coronado, California, and that was another place about as beautiful as it could be. I don't know if any of you have been there, but that's my favorite island. Here's San Diego, and there's a little island called Coronado. It was a big, big Navy base. Thousands and thousands of sailors there. And the island, you'd have to take, we called a nickel snatcher. You'd get over here and you'd put a nickel in, and you get on this boat, and they'd take you over to the island or bring you back to the base. And then we'd have to go to the YMCA, and we had a Navy pea coat, because it was cold in San Diego, and we could check this for a nickel. Then we could go uptown.
I see. You know, I heard, Al, that there was a wedding dress that 100 women got married in. They just go from one to the other. The guys would be shipping out.
Oh, well, I didn't go to ashore very often, because that wasn't my cup of tea with the Navy life. I wasn't a very good Navy soldier or Navy man, that's for sure. What we did there, I had a friend from Minneapolis, and he and I rented a little apartment. It was like a dance studio, and they had a little bedroom and bathroom off of it. But we were pretty hot stuff. We could rent an apartment in the Navy, making 21. Well, we got a little bit more, $21. We got 10% more for flight pay, and
$21 a month.
yeah. And then because we got into what we called a ferry command, and out of San Diego, we had PB-4Y1s. They were two-engine amphibious plane. We had a little kitchen in them, a little stove, little bathroom, and you kind of slept here, and you could take turns, because when we left San Diego to get to Honolulu, that was about an 18-hour hop. And
Thank you, Pauline.
You're welcome.
Very, very much.
so we,
Pauline's going to have to go now.
I'm going to have to go. And he's got four hours of tape, so I think he can use them all.
well, I don't know
Have a
if
nice weekend.
is this
Yeah.
what you want, or is this boring? I don't know.
Oh, no, it's very interesting. Keep going.
Keep it up.
Bye, Polly.
Keep going.
Well, then after we had that duty
Is that a
for,
PBY then?
that was a PB-4Y1.
Okay.
That was a two-engine amphibious plane. And we could sleep on it because it took us so long to get over to Honolulu. And we weren't in that very long. Basically, we were flying, kind of patrolling between the San Diego and Honolulu. There wasn't any more.
So you traveled with him. You say how you traveled with him that time when you went to Africa with Dean Curtis?
Yeah.
Okay, we're on. Here's the picture of the plane that Al was on.
That was the
crashed.
crew.
Yeah, with the crew there.
That was our crew.
It was August 9th, 1944.
I was going to say something about Rotary now. That's one of my favorite things. And I was just recently honored with 50 years of perfect attendance. I had very many interesting meetings in Rotary. If you didn't go to your local club, you could go to a club out of town. Well, even traveling, when I was over in Uganda, I went to Rotary over there on cruise ships. When I'd take a cruise, where we'd make up on the ship, and some of the islands we would make up. But I've enjoyed Rotary very much. I'm a very faithful member, and very honored to be having 50 years of perfect attendance.
You want to tell a little about the Paul Harris medal?
Well, I became a Paul Harris Fellow when Leighton Heuser was district governor. That was the first one. And the second Paul Harris Fellow I gave to my son Bruce. When I have a third one, I gave that to my son in Uganda.
And this is a contribution of like $1,000 or so
Yes.
to International Rotary.
Now I was going to say a little bit about my health record. My first encounter, I had a bypass in 1982, a 5-artery bypass. In 92, I had 5 more. In 2000, I had carotid artery, and that I didn't do so good. I went to sleep on it. In the room where they yelled cold blue and everybody starts running, kind of scared my wife. They're all going to my room. She didn't know what was going on. Then they come with paddles and wake you up.
Okay.
So that's quite a thrill. Now, a few years ago I had my last encounter going up to District 1 by ambulance and then to Rochester by ambulance. And give me another angiogram, but they couldn't find any more arteries to patch. They were all patched, so they thought they better leave them alone. Sent me home.
Okay.
One thing I always remember, my dad would always tell us, we have to be very fair in business. He says you can't go fooling people or do things, you got to be honest and be very fair. He preached that to us all the time. And we have to work for our church, which we've all done. We've all had jobs. Another thing, our family, Bruce has gotten the gold cross or the gold key from JC's. I have the scroll. My brother Buck has the scroll. And my brother Putz's wife has the scroll. So we've all gotten these from the JC's. We work and think real hard about downtown all the time to keep downtown going. And this is our utmost thoughts in business, is they have revive it downtown. We're doing lots of reconstruction here. It's going to be a little iffy what's going to happen to business the next few months, but we're sure we can survive it. I should maybe mention with business that when Brett's department store came to Faribault, we put a shoe department out there. Running it from this store here, we operated a shoe department at Brett's. And then they closed on us, so we had to get out. And then we went down to Medford and had an SAS store in the Medford Mall for 10 years. Now we closed that and brought them all back here. Another incident that I had not too long ago, one of these stories in the paper here, a young man from Owatonna took the Daily News to his father up in White Bear Lake. His name was Swanson. And this man was at Eniwetok the night our plane crashed. He couldn't figure out what happened. They thought maybe it was the atomic bomb because, blowing up 85 airplanes and 500-pound bombs. They thought it was like a fireworks. And he never knew what happened. Nobody ever told him. They never knew. But he was on a ship in this harbor. Well, he came down here after a few phone calls. He came down here, and he brought me these 3 pictures. This is what's left of our airplane and on the island of Eniwetok. Those 3 on the side there. I never had those, but
I'll do some close-ups after.
Okay.
he brought them down and showed me that. So I was very, very grateful and very happy for
Was that just recently?
Yeah, just recently, after all these years.
Wow.
And then the thing that
What a story.
I never forget, my father always says, no matter how bad you think you, don't buy it unless you really need it. And don't forget that.
Don't go into debt.
If you don't need it, don't buy it. End of story.
I think it's interesting how, you know, with these other stores that you had, like at Brett's and that Medford Mall, you're always forward-looking and trying new things and at the forefront of shoe business. Those wonderful SAS shoes that
We received many honors from our industry. I think the most important one was what they called Independent Retail Division. This is a division of Brown Shoe Company. Brown Shoe Company at the time had 56 shoe factories in the United States. And we were selected as the outstanding retailer in the United States
wow.
for that group of stores. We got a plaque for that. And we've had other things just recently. We had the owner of New Balance tennis shoes come and spend some time in our store. That doesn't happen very often when you get the head of these companies to come and visit you, but
There aren't many American companies left, are they, all manufacture shoes?
New Balance is quite USA. SAS is very proudly all USA. Red Wing Shoe Company is very proudly 50-50 USA.
Let's see.
But outside of that, it's pretty near all China.
You've had 4 generations of the Jarvis family buying shoes here.
Yes.
4 generations. That
Well, we're very fortunate.
I was just gonna look for a pair of shoes.
Go ahead.
Tennis shoes?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, sure.
you guys wanna get your pictures taken off?
One of the really interesting points when you talk about business and being forward-thinking is actually, this room back here, which is the tennis shoes. When my cousin and I came back to the store, and that's kind of when the whole shoe boom was just starting to happen. We started buying Nike when it wasn't even called Nike; it was called Blue Ribbon Sports. That's how far back we go with that. But most family shoe stores did not understand that whole concept of tennis shoes. To them, I'm sure you remember it was the Converse for guys or Keds for women, and that was it. And Converse were maybe $12.95, and Keds were maybe $4.95. All of a sudden, Nike came out with these leather tennis shoes, no widths, just regular, whole size only for $40. And many shoe stores, especially of the ones that have been around for a while, didn't understand that, and they said, well, that's a fad that's going to pass. And none of those are around anymore. The stores were able to adapt into that whole tennis shoe thing, because 70s and 80s, that's what all people sold, was athletic footwear back then. And we were doing slat wall back here before there was such a thing as Foot Locker. So it was fortunate that we had come back from college. We're kind of talking about that, but yet Dad and his brothers were willing to try this, even though I'm sure they were scratching their heads saying, "What in the world is this stuff all about?" But that's really what got us through those years. And most shoe stores, at least of that generation, did not make it through that because of our tennis shoes. So it was kind of interesting. See, this used to be our repair shop. This was not always a tennis shoe room back here.
Oh, this is
When we first had this building, this back section was repair here, then our work booths were over there. And then we bought the building next door, and that's when we put the repair shop over there and made this a tennis shoe room, and that was back in the 70s. Like I say, before there was even Foot Lockers and things like that around. So.
Now, it's interesting to note that you don't just service Faribault area. with your repair shop, you have many different towns bringing over items for repair. Is that correct?
Well, repair and build up. You know, we're very fortunate that we have a reputation that we can help foot problems. You know, we're a shoe store, but we also take care of your feet.
Buck has
Yeah, and Buck does that, and Brian has really, you know, has continued on with that, and you know, and many of us down here can handle, you know, a lot of issues. I mean, they're specialized in that, but people really come to us from a wide area, and we get a lot of doctors' referrals, which really helps. I mean, it's, you know, our radius, I'd say, is about a 50 to 60 mile radius around our store, and you know, on a day we go through our checks, and I'll bet 2/3 of our checks are out of town; they're not local. So we're very fortunate that way. We really are. We do have a good reputation, which has been fostered over the years, and the inventory we've been able to build up. You know, they put their money in the inventory, and we were able to buy that and keep that inventory going. Well, today, if you're starting a store, you cannot afford an inventory like this, but because it's been passed on from generation to generation, you know, we can have the inventory we have, and you know, that's to our advantage. You will do that, but it's been built up for a lot of years that way
think
too.
of all the sizes and all the colors
yeah, when you
of
think
this
about that.
one particular shoe. I
Very
don't
much.
know how you do it.
Very much, yeah.
Now the grandchildren got us all on computers.
Well, they've taken the next step now. Now we sell on the website, you know. So we have a website. So that's the next generation, you know. So it keeps evolving, you know. It keeps evolving, and
Keep on with that radio show. I listen to that.
yeah, that's been a lot of fun. The radio show's been a lot of fun, and it's interesting because I think every cow in southern Minnesota milks the KDHL radio station because it's a huge rural station, and we get people in here every day. Are you the one that's on the radio? But most of them are, you know, are farmers, and they're up early in the morning, you know, and they're out and things like that. And but
They want the red wings.
they want their red wings, but a lot of them do come in and talk about that radio show. But it's surprising that the draw that KHL does have in the area that services, and how many people do listen to that radio station.
Maybe you could have your dad and your uncles on sometime.
Well, we could do that. We could do that. But it's been a lot of fun.
It's informative. It's not. It's selling. It's informative.
Well, we try to make it fun, you know, and I don't get into necessarily what's on sale this week. I talk about foot issues. Like the other guy was talking about, well, when should you have a look for a first baby pair of shoes? You know, how old should they be? Someone said, well, when should my child start to tie shoes? You know, he's going into first grade, doesn't tie his shoes. Is that a problem? So you talk about things like that, you know, and you know what.
The big picture.
Yeah, it is, and you know, I talk about leathers, like you know, there's certain leathers today where they can take and they take the hide and they split it down the middle, which makes two pieces of leather, but they're not real durable. So then they spray it with a coating. Well, that's called action leather. So they can claim it's leather, but it really is a leather with a polyurethane coating on it, so it doesn't breathe. It's stiff and it's boring and cracks. So I just like to talk about things like that, so people really know what's going on in the shoe business. Because you can see, they say, well, gosh, this leather shoe is $30. You know, how come I can get leather? Well, that's why, because it's a different kind of leather. But, so just things like that I like to talk about. Kind of fun facts about the shoe business.
So what is your World Wide Web address?
It's www.burkhartzmeyershoes.com.
How long has that been up and running?
Oh, my one son started that 4 or 5 years ago. And you know, he was in college then, and he was home more often. The problem with having a website is you really need somebody to man that daily, especially if you're going to sell off of it, because you get a lot of inquiries and stuff. With him being gone, we've made it a little more of an informational site, more so than selling off of it. Although when he was around, we sold off of it, and it was quite interesting. I mean, we were shipping shoes all across the country, but it takes a lot of work to keep a site updated. And, unless you really have a full-time person to do it, we just couldn't do it. So we still have our site, which is full of information about shoes and footwear and health issues, foot health issues. But we're not selling off of it. Yeah, if we really want to do it, we'd have to have something full-time. And my sons could do it if they want to get back into retail. We'll see. We'll see.
How old was your mother when she died? 107.
107.
107. And how about telling us, like, you know, how your day goes? You mentioned about different friends that take you here and there through the day. Let's kind of get a little snapshot of your typical day. Get up in the morning, Gus Hoffman picks you up.
I get up every morning, at least 7 o'clock. Gus Hoffman comes, picks me up, takes me over to Basilio's for coffee. We have 6, 8, 10 guys there. And Rod Mahler brings me over here. And this noon, they're always looking at to go to lunch. And today I should have been up at Cardiac. They moved it a day. I go to Cardiac 3 times a week up at District 1. I enjoy that very much. Working out, and I have nurses there to watch me. And when I get done with that, I'm very tired. By 4 o'clock, I'm usually home with my pajamas on, sitting in my chair. So that's an interesting day.
And you go to bed about what time then?
11 o'clock. Well, I come down here because being here so long, you know so many people. So I can be the official greeter. Go up and visit with these people. Just had some in here today. You helped the mother and the 2 daughters, or one was a daughter and daughter-in-law, all from out of town. I remember when you sold me shoes. Now they're all women. They come back to see their
I remember how you used to remember the shoe sizes of
that I did a
about
lot of
100
too.
people in town or more.
You always wore an 8.5. Now you told me you went to a 9.
Yeah, I would do that. Yeah. Anything else you want to say?
Well, I just talk about the coffee clubs. It's interesting. Not only were they all in different service organizations. Al was Rotary, Putz was in Lions and Bucks and Exchange Club, but they also all 3 belong to different coffee clubs.
All right.
And the coffee clubs are always quite interesting because you come back with information, but they all vary a little bit as far as what's actually the fact. But when we got all 3 of the coffee club reports together, you had a pretty good idea of what was going on. But
About 90% right.
about 90% right. So that's always kind of fun to hear what because Al had always been at Basilio's, and then Putz always used to go down to the Wimpy's one when they were going down there. And Buckhead, he's always over at the donut shop for his information. So.
The truth was actually the overlapping bits of the story.
Exactly, yes, exactly. But it was always fun when they had 3 different versions of the same story. And then
how would you sum up life in a town the size of Faribault? What advantages do you see for living and having a business in a town like this?
Well, we have everything we want right here. And if you want something bigger, well, you got 50 miles, you can go to the Twins or Viking games. I think we're very well situated with our parks and our facilities for the youth people. Now they want to build a big soccer complex out here, beautiful swimming pool. Faribault has a lot of things going for it. They've certainly expanded and been building. Every area of the community is expanding.
Yeah, it's really grown these last 10 years especially. Would you want to say anything more about your philosophy of life or advice that you might give for young people?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is learn how to work. And a lot of young people, I suppose we could categorize that they don't know how to do that yet. But you have to be very honest, you have to be very upright, and serve a customer. When they come in, you have to be there to wait on them and try to have what they want. And if you don't, you better find out what they want. And I've loved retail all my life, and I've enjoyed it. And thank goodness we've been successful with it. And with the next generations coming up, I'm sure we're going to continue to be successful.
You know, I think you should you should get a university degree because you got it through your experiences, even if you didn't attend college.
So, I think of that often, and I never did get to go to college, but we had to learn everything the hard way.
College of Hard Knocks.
It all cost you money our way, but we made it anyway.
Yeah. Anything more you want to say, Bruce?
Well, you know, there's an immense amount of pride in the family business, especially generations like that. And what is so unique is I don't care where you are, it seems you run into somebody that has heard of the store. And I know my mother was talking to her sister out in California, and they have a new vicar at their church. So she says, well, she's from Minnesota. So my aunt asked this gal, have you ever heard of Burkhartzmeyer shoes? Oh, we used to get all of our shoes there. She's from Jamesville or someplace over here, you know. And I was in college. I was going to Europe one time. I'm getting off the plane in London, which left from Chicago, and I'm walking down, and there's somebody walking down with a Burkhartzmeyer shoe sack in their hand, you know. So I run up to him and I said, where did you get that? Well, we were visiting my relatives in Faribault, and you know, it's I don't care where you go. It seems you run into somebody that knows somebody, and that's one of the things when you've been around as long as we have. You know, paths cross over the years, and fortunately you have a very good reputation, and of course with that name too, it's kind of unique. So a lot of people don't forget that if they can learn to pronounce it.
And do you folks have any big plans for your 60-year business anniversary coming up next year?
You know, we'll do something. We had a big thing for our 50th. In fact, we had the radio station down. We broadcast AM Minnesota, that show Gordy Costello does for a whole week from down here, and talk a lot about the history, not only our store, but the history of downtown Faribault. And then we'll probably get, you know, because we're very involved in the history of downtown Faribault, and you know, there's less and less retail downtown, so we become, you know, one of the anchors downtown as far as retail goes. And, you know, I'm sure we'll try and get a lot of our lines, our company reps involved with that, coming down for trunk shows and different things like that. But that's a little ways off. We haven't really decided. But we did a big deal for our 50th, so I'm sure we'll do something big for the 60th.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you remember when Klobuchar was down here?
Sure. Yeah, Jim Klobuchar, the columnist.
Yeah,
in
I
the
don't
cities,
remember much about that. I know he was
He did
here.
he did a book signing down here.
Oh.
Buck helped him with his feet. He was having trouble with his feet, and through a friend, he said, you know, you should try this guy downtown. And he came down, and Buck helped him a lot with his foot issues, and so one of his book signings he did right down here at our store. So
He was like a hiker, wasn't he?
very much an outdoorsman, yes, yeah, very much an outdoorsman, but hiking, camping, a lot of that. Yes.
Big column in the Minneapolis paper.
That doesn't hurt, does it? Okay, anything else to sum it up, or we'll close things out? Any last word, Al? I think you've done a wonderful job. Great memory, and so happy to.
I don't know what I did here, but I hope it's all right.
Very well done. That brand in here.
Oh, good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rolling here. I'd like to make a few comments about number 64 here.
Well,
That photograph.
this is the crew that I was flying with. This is me on this corner here. These were all killed. And Chalmers here, he had a brother who was flying B-24 in Italy, and he was killed. And I went to visit his parents when he was brought back, and we're at Jefferson Barracks Cemetery, sitting in a car, and his dad, just like that, cracked up on us. Pretty sad. This here was a tail gunner. His name was Hepper. And his mother...
Hold that upright a bit. There you go.
His mother, I went down to visit them, and she was so thrilled that here comes a young man to take her out, and she must have had 20 pieces of jewelry on each arm, and boy, we'd go. But I never knew until a long time later his dad was an FBI man, and we'd go in someplace, and she'd say, "This is Hepper." Bingo, we'd get there in a front row seat, the best table in the house. And I never saw Bill. I went with him once up to Chicago when this other boy was buried in Chicago. I went up to the funeral and they met me there. They said, "You come with me." And we walked through a hall of some kind of a house, and I thought it said bathroom or something, and all of a sudden the door opened, we walked in. Great big gambling casino. Boy, he knew everything and how to get into everything. And I thought, my gosh, I sit there, I maybe had $10 in my pocket, and I'd see these people, I thought, what in the world am I doing here? Then I went to see the co-pilot here, his family. She already had another boyfriend. That was a waste of time. She didn't care to see me at all.
Oh,
And then, this is the pilot. I went to see his wife in Houston, Texas. His mother lived in Huegun, Washington, and they fought real hard because when this first came out, they said pilot error.
oh.
And she didn't think it was a pilot error, and it wasn't. They finally had a big rebuke about it.
Oh, they did. Oh.
Yeah, I got a shirt thing, and when these admirals started discussing this, then they always have to send something to me about it.
Let's see.
See, this one was from Idaho.
Pretty young
Oh, yeah.
bunch.
He was our crew chief. He was from Tennessee. Yeah. And to this day, even if I'm at Rotary and they sing a patriotic song, I'm always thinking of my crew. I've done that all the time. I don't know, it just automatically.
Isn't that interesting? What are those pictures of the Shattuck School?
James Wolf's wife got us to come up there and do that.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she's the one that did it.
Oh,
She's the one that got it in the paper, then Pauline come and talked to us. But she thought it would be good for Shattuck. So,
1928. Picture of the three brothers.
yeah, 8, 6, and 4.
We
Well,
get-
see, we were so poor. On Sundays, Dad would take us up to Shattuck. We could watch the dress rehearse. And that was like a show. The band would play. And then another thing I didn't say, where KC Club is now, that used to be a tennis court. And Shaft Pierce owned that.
Oh,
And we'd go down there, and Dad and Buck would play, Putz and I, we'd play tennis after work or after school. But that's what we did. And one of the other things, at home, Dad took and hung down on like a punching ball, and he got us nice leather gloves, and we would punch that thing. Then we would have boxing amongst us. Dad'd sit there with a bunch of spoons in a glass. Round one, he'd shake the glass, and we'd hit each other for a minute, then he'd shake the glass around two. But that's what we did
this is
when
a
we were
feature
little.
story from Pauline Schreiber there. So,
We played a lot of
75th
cards at
anniversary.
home. We do that even in noon hours. We'd come home and play cards. Euchre, 500.
yeah, 500.
Yep.
Wholesome entertainment.
Well, we enjoyed it. We didn't know any better. And then when we were growing up, we'd go out to Grandpa and Grandma's farm on Cannon Lake. They lived on the big old hill, house on top of the hill. We'd work pretty near all afternoon shoveling off some of the snow. Then we could skate for about 15 minutes. We'd have to go home. But that's what we did on Sundays.
I see.
And then they had hills there. We would cut some wood and get them so we could bend them. We made our own skis. And one time we went down the hill, one of my cousins ran into a tree. And we stopped that.
So you had to steam the wood to get there?
Yeah.
curl on the end there.
Well, that's what we did for entertainment.
I see.
Well, thank you folks for everything here.
Well, I hope
think
this
we're
is
gonna
what
wrap
you
it up.
wanted. I didn't
Jeff.
know